Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, and I'm excited about today's episode. Our guest today is Larry Mickwee, and Larry has done a lot. He's a retired football coach. He coached at my alma mater, T.R. Miller High School, back in the late 60s and early 70s. He's a retired divisional vice president for Safeway Services, and he's done a lot in between. So, Larry, thanks for joining us today.
It's a real honor to be here, especially given the high caliber of guests you've had in the past. So, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, let me just start with kind of an obvious question, I guess, in my mind. But you started your working career as a football coach, and so, like I said, you graduated from college with your master's degree. You went to work as an assistant coach at T.R. Miller High School in Brewton, Alabama. Went on to be the head coach at Ramsey High in Birmingham, and then McGill-Tulane down in Mobile. So you did that, but then you ended up in corporate America. So talk about that, what that journey looked like, and what led you to that decision.
Great question, and sometimes I wonder myself how it all worked out, but I honestly believe I'm probably as fortunate a human being as anybody on this planet. I was fortunate enough to do what I always wanted to do as a kid, and that is coach high school football. I had the opportunity to do that, and fortunately, I also had the opportunity to be a head coach. I coached football for 12 years. I was a head coach for 8 of those 12. So, gosh, you just can't get any better than that. And to this moment, I don't know if there's a feeling that can ever meet running out on a football field on Friday night. It's just that sort of excitement is very difficult to top. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of things that were very exciting, but nothing ever competes with that in terms of just a thrill. But again, as I said, I was a head coach for 8 years. At the time that I was coaching, I really felt like I'd been a head coach. There was nowhere else really to go except into college, which I would have loved to have done. But about that time, the NCAA started to cut back on the number of assistants you could have in college. And they started going to all these graduate assistants. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're free, so that's tough to compete with. Right. Basically, I felt like I think I was around 38 or so. Mm-hmm. And I decided either you're going to go on with this or you're going to make a change. And about that time, my son came along, and I thought, well, it's now or never, so maybe I should take a chance at doing something else. And one of the other big driving forces was, you teach kids, as I tried to do for 12 years, that if you work really hard and you outwork the other guy and you're a team player and you really do things that benefit the entire group, not just yourself, if you follow those things, you're going to be a success no matter what you do. And I thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity to try to prove that.
Okay. And as I said, I'm a T.R. Miller alumni, and we had Jamie Riggs on the podcast several weeks ago. Man, what an outstanding coach and legend he is in Brewton. So when you think of your time at Miller, you think about T.R. Miller, what comes to mind?
It always has been an important thing to me. When we were at T.R. Miller and we won the state championship in '69, I didn't really think about it as much at the time, but I do now. That was 1969. Mm-hmm. It was the year that the schools were integrated in Brewton. Very consequential year. The contribution that the city of Brewton made by not opening private schools, by combining the schools, not that it was always easy, it wasn't. That had a profound impact on our team, on our school, and in our community. I think the idea that what they pushed in terms of keeping that school open and integrating that school made a huge difference. I know it did to our football team. It was just a shining example of what can be done when you do things the right way.
Yeah, no doubt, and that was 1969, but to this day, Brewton City Schools is one of the top school systems in the state. I think the fact that there was never a private school introduced in Brewton has a lot to do with that. So,
I know it did at the time, and it was a great example of what you can do. And, of course, it was a great start for me. I would never have had the opportunity to be a head coach in those other places had I not been a very small part of that championship team. That helps your resume. So, but again, I had very little to do with it, but it was a great year.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the parallels then between leadership on the football field and then in business, because I also need to point out that your nephew, Josh Young, is married to one of my partners, Rachel. Okay. Right. And so Rachel and I were talking about the podcast. Of course, she knew that you were going to be a guest, and she said, one of the things that Aunt Nita, your wife, Nita, said about Larry was, she said, I think his head coaching experience made him a much more successful business person. So, number one, do you agree? And then parallel for me kind of what leadership looks like on the football field versus the corporate boardroom.
Well, you may find it very surprising, but I think they're very, very, very similar. The idea that young people, who may be at times a pretty tough crowd, if you can convince those people, if you can get them to buy into what you think and what you believe, the chances are pretty good that you would be able to do the same thing with business associates or potential customers. And I think that's absolutely true. I just don't think you could ever discount how important it is for young people to be a part of something and to work toward a group goal and give of themselves for the greater good. If you can convince people to do that, your chances of being successful are going to go way, way up, because I firmly believe that is the reason that football teams, any organization, and of course business organizations as well, you have to have the buy-in of the people who are doing the work. Yeah. If you can do that, you're on the road. Yeah,
no doubt. All right, so let's talk about your leadership style then. Define leadership, or what is your leadership style? Talk about that.
Sure. This has been said many times, and it's absolutely true. Every leader has a different personality. If you try to imitate another leader, you're really not going to do very well. You have to follow your own heart, follow your own mind, and do what you think is important. For me, I think it's a unique blend of confidence and humility. You have to be confident. If you don't believe in yourself, you will absolutely not have anyone ever believe in you. Right. You have to believe that you can get it done. And if you believe that, then you have a shot at convincing others to believe it. In my work, both in football and in business, I was kind of a reclamation expert. We played against some terrific people when I was coaching, both at Ramsey and at McGill. But there was never a time that I felt like that we couldn't be successful. And I think if you believe that, it shows, and that transcends to the people that are working with you, whether they're kids or whether they're adults in the business world. And like I said, the same thing happened in business. I took positions that maybe other people wouldn't take. Not maybe. It was pretty certain. I think I got them by default. Yeah. But in many of those cases, we were able to turn things around and in some cases basically go from worst to first kind of thing. And that can't help but advance your career. And that was basically what happened in mine. So, so again, I think you have to be absolutely confident, but you also have to be humble enough to know that it's not just you. Our skills as a leader are different from the people who work with us. You may be in charge of people who do computer input or manual labor or whatever they do, but they're experts at what they do. You're not. So my experience has been to allow people to know everyone has their own talent and they make their own unique contribution to the whole. My job as the leader was not any more important to success than theirs was. It was just different. So I think that idea works well for those who follow you, just understanding that they do their jobs well, we succeed. I do my job well, we succeed. They're just different. Neither is any more crucial than the other. You may be part of the driving force, but it's the people that work with you and the people that buy into what you believe. Those are the people that get it done. And if you ever forget that, you just won't be a good leader. You don't have a chance.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I do want to circle back, though, and kind of land on something that you talked about just briefly on as far as the turnaround aspect of your career, both on the football field and in business. So, we talk a lot on this podcast about the things that people do right and the things that you want to emulate as a leader or whatever, but we don't often talk about maybe some things that are not good or guest experiences with bad leaders or just not ideal situations. So look at the organizations that you went into or the teams that you took over that were having some struggles. what were some of the issues that were causing them to lag behind, for lack of a better word? I mean, can you pinpoint a couple of commonalities maybe that were there that were holding them back?
I really never thought about it that way, but there will always be reasons. In other words, no situation is impossible to fix, but you have to identify what was wrong. And I think that's where your question is heading. In terms of failures of leadership or problems with leadership, I think they're more identifiable in the business side. You have people who are not legitimately concerned with the success of an organization. They are self-promoters, I guess is what I should say. Yeah. And self-promoters really have a very difficult time, and they sour an organization. The first job I had after being a salesman down here in Mobile, I went to Detroit. They were just about to close. It was one of the very worst branches around. And when I got up there, the people just had no confidence that the company was going to stand behind them. They had no confidence that they were going to be successful. You just have to turn that around. I think they got a big kick out of me coming from Alabama, and they thought, "Oh, geez, here comes this guy off the turnip truck." But I told them when I got there, I didn't come up here to lose. I made a huge investment with my family and my time to make this branch the best in the system. And they all kind of looked at me like I had three eyes. But I think gradually they bought into that. Also, just a kind of a common sense thing in terms of example. Just do the right thing every day and take no shortcuts. And your coworkers will notice that, and they'll follow your lead, and success will come. It's not a matter of if, sometimes it's a matter of when, but a simple thing like that, making the right steps, what you know is right in your heart and your mind, and not trying to abbreviate the process or take any shortcuts. And also, finally, we always look at the idea of publicly acknowledging the good work of others. I think that's critical for their morale among their peers and to the outside community. If you have people that are really doing a great job, you should let them know. And not only them, but their coworkers and the public at large, if that's possible. So those are some of the things I think that worked well for me, some specific things rather than just generalities in terms of leadership.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and we talk a lot about relationships that we have in previous episodes, and I think that's kind of maybe a backdoor way of saying what you just talked about. I mean, you have to care not only about the organization and about the success of the organization, but about the team members that you're working with inside the organization. And I think if you get the relationship part right, then a lot of that will follow for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the things that you mentioned on your primer was do the toughest things first. And I love that because I think a lot of times people put the toughest things off until the end. And by that time, you're tired or you're distracted or whatever, but you've still got that big rock to move, right? Talk a little bit about that. I mean, do you have experience doing that? I mean, how did you arrive at that mantra, I guess?
Well, that is absolutely true. And I tried to basically pass that idea along, especially on the business side. When you take a position, I don't care what type of position it is, there are going to be problems. If you put off the most difficult problems and just keep putting them off, first of all, you're going to lose the confidence of the people who are trying to follow because they know what the importance of those issues are. Plus, the longer you let those problems linger, the worse they become, and they become tougher and tougher and tougher. So if you can overcome initial issues, the toughest things you have to do, if you can get that done, again, it's an enormous confidence builder. It gives you time to really plan and to do the other things that you need to do to be successful. And the flip side of that is if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to make progress. You have to get over the biggest hurdle first. Right. If you don't, you're just backing up.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you this. So obviously, I mean, you were a coach. You're a football coach, and so mentoring and coaching is important to you, I can tell. Talk to me about the speech teacher that you had in high school. You mentioned him or her, I guess, her as someone who was a big influence on your life. What exactly did you learn from her?
Oh, gosh, a great question, and it makes me smile when I think about it. This was actually a nun who taught me at John Carroll High School in Birmingham. It was my junior year, and like most kids at that age, or at least my friends, we cared 100% about playing football. And that was the only thing that was important to me in school, and what we did there, we just kind of got by. But she was a speech teacher, and she was a very enthusiastic person, which to me, there's no substitute for enthusiasm. Right. We were given assignments, and I think one of the first speeches I made in front of the class was very well received, and she was very encouraging to me and made me believe that I had something that I could say that would affect other people, and that I could deliver it in a way that would affect other people. And that was a real turning point for me. Mm-hmm. I actually thought, well, geez, maybe people will listen to me. That is the beginning, to me, the foundation of what happened to me the rest of my life. I gave me a great deal of confidence, and again, motivated me to do bigger things.
I think that's great. And I've talked actually within the last 2 or 3 weeks on podcasts about the importance of, especially when you're younger, when you're a teenager or early college years, having a belief in yourself that you have worth, right? That your opinion matters, that what you bring to the table is worth something, even though you may not have the vast life experience of someone, twice your age. That doesn't minimize what you can offer to whatever the situation is. And it sounds like that's kind of what she instilled in you.
Absolutely. If you believe something with all your heart, and I think this was another thing that she pushed that has always stuck with me. People used to get nervous before they would make a speech. And she said, look, don't think about the people listening to you out there, or don't worry about the crowd. You have something that you firmly believe or that you feel very strongly about. And it's your job to import that to those people out there where they can understand. If you believe in what you say, you're not going to worry about them. Yeah. You're going to go on and deliver the speech as you should. And that always stuck with me. And I always felt like if you firmly believe something, it's pretty easy to want to share that with other people. Mm-hmm. If you have that fervor about it, you're that excited about it, it's not that difficult because you want that message to be translated out there and you want it to be delivered properly. Yeah. If you believe strongly about what you're saying, it's easy to speak in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking a little bit before we started recording. You are retired, I guess, officially retired now, right. But you were saying that you didn't know how you had time to work before because of all the things that you had going on. I know one of the things that you're actively involved in is you're on the advisory board of St. Michael Catholic High School in Fairhope. So talk a little bit about St. Michael. That's a relatively new school, just built an outstanding, beautiful campus there. So talk about that and the importance in your mind of giving back to the Catholic Church and to that school in particular.
Well, it has just been a great honor for me and a privilege for me to contribute just a very small part of my time and life to St. Michael's. But you're absolutely right. It is just a terrific high school. The best ambassadors for the school, by the way, are the students. They just seem to love the school. And every year it has grown. At the beginning, when the idea of building the school, of course, the idea has been around for a long, long time, but the actual construction of the school, people worried if we would have enough kids who would be interested in going there. And gosh, now we're to the point there are waiting lists and all sorts of things. So it's a terrific school. We have a wonderful principal there who does a terrific job. Mm-hmm. I think it has really added to Baldwin County, certainly to the Catholic community, but we have a number of non-Catholic students as well. It's just a thrill to be around them. It really is. They're great kids. They love where they are and love the school where they are. So it's been terrific. And again, to be on the advisory board, believe me, we don't tell anybody what to do. We just kind of share what we hear in the community about the school and listen to some of the plans for the future and add a little bit of our opinions to those. But it is a terrific school, and I wish everybody who hasn't had a chance to ride by there could take a look at it. The growth plan for the school, not only from the academic side, but the athletic side is very bright. You may know Philip Rivers now is our new high school football coach, who's just a terrific guy.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on at St. Michael. You've seen a lot and worked with a lot of people in your career, both at the high school coaching level and obviously in business. So based on your breadth of experience, if you could go back and tell 18-year-old Larry one thing or give him one piece of advice that you think would help younger you in your life, what would you offer your 18-year-old self?
Don't be afraid to try anything. If it's something you want to do, go for it. It has always amazed me in coaching as well as business that if you have passionate about anything, I don't care what it is, It's amazing how many people are not passionate about it and do not work that hard. And especially when I got out of coaching and went into business, you just don't have that level of commitment.
Yeah.
So often in the business world, as you witnessed while you were coaching. Mm-hmm. I absolutely believe to the core that if you really are passionate about what you do, you outwork the people that you compete with, and that you have confidence that you're going to be there at the end of the day, you're going to make it. You can do whatever you want. That's what this country has always been about. I hope it continues to stay that way. And again, I am absolutely the luckiest guy in the world. I had an opportunity to do that. I mean, I grew up in in West End, up near Birmingham. My dad owned a tavern. We certainly were not poor, but we were not by any stretch, didn't have a great deal of money at all. Before I retired, I ended up with the opportunity to meet with people on Wall Street, private equity people, making presentations about our company. It's the things that dreams are made of. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a surreal story for me. It's just been a great life for the most part, for most everything that we've been able to do. Now, not to say that there weren't some setbacks and disappointments. There were. Right. A lot of them happened on Friday night, but we were very fortunate. I've been very fortunate with everything we've done. But I believe it all starts with just being passionate about what you do and believing that you're going to be a success at it.
Yeah, that's great advice, but inherent in what you're talking about, though, I mean, you can have all the passion in the world, but there's got to be an action, right? So you've got to take action. You can't just believe that you can do something and sit back and wait for it to happen. I mean, that initiating step, I think, is important. I think that's sometimes what people miss. They've got an idea they've got the passion, but for some reason they don't take that first step, and that's just do something, right? And then if you do something, and then most of the time, hopefully, it'll turn out well.
Again, it takes a lot of courage, it takes some hard work, and it takes a lot of planning. And these things you just have to get off the mark and do.
Yeah.
And you may have the greatest intentions in the world, but no value, no intention, nothing works unless you have the courage to step out and try it and do it and make it happen. And making it happen, again, there's a lot of things involved with that. You have to plan, not generalities, but the specifics. What am I going to do? What is my plan for success?
Larry, I tell you what, your passion, I can tell, I know why you were successful in football and in business. I mean, your passion is palpable. I appreciate it. You've given us some great insights. I wish I had a couple hours to sit here and talk to you. We don't have that time, but the fact that you were willing to come down and spend this time with us today, it really means a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. You guys do a great job with this podcast, and I'm just very honored to have been here. And I absolutely want to thank Rachel. What a terrific person, as I told you before. Just a wonderful, wonderful lady and terrific part of our family.
Yeah, well, and firm's lucky to have her as well. But Larry, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.